Where were you in 2017 when we had the worst president in the history of the United States? We will all be able to say the United Democratic Party led the resistance, ensured that this president was a one-term president, and elected Democrats across this country.
Fiery start there for the new chair of the DNC, Tom Perez, after his election yesterday. He joins us live this morning. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Chairman.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
You got a congratulations from the president yesterday, right after your win. He says, congratulations to Thomas Perez, who has just been named chairman of the DNC. I could not be happier for him or for the Republican Party.
Perez defeated the more progressive Representative Keith Ellison of Minnesota in a close race that was also closely watched. Many Ellison supporters made their displeasure clear when Donna Brazile, the outgoing chair, announced the results.
Right now, there is a disconnect, George, between a rather sclerotic Democratic apparatus, which is in complete disarray. I mean, the Democratic Party has not been in this bad shape since perhaps the 1920s, and a huge uprising at the grassroots, mostly against Trump. Now, how can Tom Perez, can he actually utilize that, turn the Democratic Party from a vast fundraising machine into a movement? Hasn't been done before very easily. I mean, you remember in the Vietnam War days, we had a huge uprising, but obviously the Democratic Party had nothing to do with that. The thing that worries me most of all is that if you look at the problems inside the Democratic Party, they have a lot to do with the same sort of populist uprising we're seeing across the country, including the Donald Trump campaign. That is, people for 35 years have not had a raise. The average American is actually economically in a lot of economic desperation, insecure. We have parts of this country that are really desolate.
Jerry Seib, you wrote a very interesting piece this week talking about actually that both political parties are going through this redefinition exercise. I mean, we saw Donald Trump at CPAC. Essentially, he's redefining conservatism through his vision. And I think Democrats are still searching for what they are. They clearly are moving to the left, but a party of no to what?
Well, two things. All the energy in both parties is outside of Washington right now. It's at the grassroots. Right. It's Trump followers and Sanders followers. Second, Donald Trump spent as much time in the last 2 decades as an independent or a Democrat as he did as a Republican. And Bernie Sanders is essentially an independent. So those are the two most energizing forces in the two parties.
It's a great point. Almost hard stop. Let's let people digest that. Both Sanders and Trump are not really members of their own parties.
That they lead, basically. And so Tom Perez was not the Bernie Sanders candidate, so you have to temper that. But everybody who was watching that DNC meeting knows where the energy was in that party, and it was with the Sanders people. And Tom Perez needs to get them at the grassroots. And interesting, he started talking with you today about a state Senate race in Delaware.
Right.
Talk about getting the message. We got to go back to the grassroots.
People talking about Tom Perez as the moderate candidate in this race. Right. There was no moderate candidate in this race. Tom Perez was confirmed in 2013 as Obama's labor secretary by a vote of 54 to 48, or 54 to 46. He was not a moderate or uncontroversial pick by any means.
This is a party in transition. This is a party that's trying to figure out what's next, what's its identity. And the fact that Keith Ellison, the congressman from Minnesota, who was backed by Senator Bernie Sanders, lost this election in the short run is going to raise questions about whether or not Democrats can stay together, can unify in a way that Tom Perez tried to do. But let me suggest that this is going to be a much longer process. I was out in Sacramento in January, just after they'd had some local party caucuses, and everybody I talked to was shocked at the number of people who'd showed up. And they were all Bernie Sanders supporters, and they all elected, their first sort of level of delegates who would then go on to the state convention and all this. There is a concerted movement on the Sanders side to take over local state parties, which will eventually lead to new people being on the Democratic National Committee, and maybe if this process had been a little faster, the outcome would have been different.
Look, there's been a lot of energy focused on the difference between Keith Ellison and Tom Perez, and who's further to the left and who better represents the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but they're both to the left of center. And one is a Hispanic American, the other is a Muslim American. They both have some messaging challenges when it comes to that sort of natural instinctive appeal to middle America, who the Democrats have to win back.
Really, year by year by year, I think the importance and the strength of national parties has declined.
Working people in America have lost the sense that the Democratic Party is there for them, that is their voice. And Trump and Bannon have plowed into that territory, saying we are there for the American worker. And I think that the election of Perez is actually bad news on that front, because it seems to me that he is more likely to pursue the more coastal agenda, if you like.
What this says to me is that they've now put someone in the chairman of the Democratic Party who doesn't understand what's going on in America. You know, you have an opportunity, they would have had an opportunity to pick a candidate that understood what middle America is about, and not someone who's just concerned about the East Coast or the West Coast. And instead what we've seen is, you know, more of the same from the Democratic Party, which is what caused them to lose this election at the presidential level.
We can't leave without addressing changes in the Democratic Party. A new head of the Democratic National Committee. What does it mean?
Well, it means that the Democratic establishment has won again, just like they did when Hillary Clinton won the primary.
And that worked out really well.
And it worked out so well for them. But, you know, I mean, the Democrats are powerless to a historic extent, right? They have so little power in the states, in state legislatures, governorships, in the House and the Senate, and of course the presidency. And so this is a party that is grappling with deep divisions and trying to figure out a way forward, both politically, how they can win again, and also in terms of, on a basic philosophical level, what the party stands for. You had Tom Perez seen as the establishment candidate backed by the Clinton and Obama wings of the party, and Keith Ellison, who was Bernie Sanders' candidate. And these are, of course, rough approximations, and there are a lot of nuances. The interesting thing to me was when Tom Perez, the establishment candidate, won the DNC race, and they made Keith Ellison a vice chair, brought him on stage together, said, let's all have party unity, and the progressive movement was not having it. Bernie Sanders tweeted about it, and numerous progressive groups expressed a lot of discontent. So these divisions can't be papered over.